A quick weeknight sheet pan meal with gnocchi, peas, asparagus, bacon. It's fresh, it's spring-like, really filling, really hearty, and super delicious. Let's make some. So for a weeknight sheet pan gnocchi dinner, we're not gonna make the gnocchi. Instead, we're gonna use pre-made gnocchi. You can buy shelf-stable gnocchi, and it's one of the best things because guess what? It's ready to go. Now, if you don't know, gnocchi is from usually potatoes, and it's a great like dumpling like pasta. It can soak in so many great flavors, and it doesn't take long to take it from this stage once it's prepared to the dinner table. So to start, we're gonna use some wonderful ingredients, some fresh things. Spring is coming, so we have asparagus coming into the stores. I love to use that. We have peas, we have lemon, bright flavors, but I wanna start with bacon. Bacon obviously is gonna be that rich, deep, smoky flavor that's really gonna lend well to the gnocchi and really bring out some of those flavors. So I wanna start by actually frying the bacon. It's the only thing that's done on the stove, and I like to start with a cold skillet and put my bacon in. To me, a cold skillet with the bacon is gonna slowly render that fat out as it comes up to temperature, but we're gonna use some of that bacon grease when we actually go to make our sheet pan dinner because that's gonna have so much flavor. So we're gonna lay this in here, we're gonna make sure it gets nice and fried on both sides, and then we'll keep going. I'm taking off the last piece of bacon, and I'm just putting it on a paper towel lined little pan. That way it just soaks in any of the residual grease from the bacon. But look down in here, it doesn't take much bacon to make a lot of grease, which you can see. And that's why you wanna render it separately and not just assume you're gonna use all the grease. So we're gonna let that cool off just slightly as we get everything else ready. So over here we have all the components, which I get really excited about spring produce because after a long winter, living in the Midwest where it gets cold, you don't have a lot of things, you're excited about the fresh colors, about the fresh flavors that are coming into markets or stores before they come into my garden. So I'm gonna put the gnocchi right into a bowl. We're kind of just build everything. I think it's easier to mix into a bowl as opposed to just mixing everything on a sheet pan. I never think you can get all the oil and everything dispersed evenly. So I'm taking some shallot, which again, shallot can be a spring item too, but what I love about shallot is it's sweeter, a little bit less astringent than onion, and so it offers this nice light onion flavor. My shallot is not ready yet in the garden. We're still early in Iowa, but I'm starting to hit those flavors with this. I plant my shallot in the fall with my garlic, and then it sits there all winter. In the spring, it pops up and keeps growing until it's ready, which isn't usually until closer to something like June or July. So we have asparagus here. Now again, this is not my homegrown asparagus. Homegrown asparagus usually is a little bit bigger than this, but the one big difference when you buy asparagus in a grocery store, when you look underneath, it's gonna have usually some dry tips. Now, if it's fresh, it shouldn't. But, you know, during shipping or during just storage at a grocery store waiting for someone to buy it, it will dry out a little bit on the bottom. That's why if you have it fresh, when you get it home, you should just cut that off right away and put it into a glass of water in your fridge. That will keep it more fresh. But in this case, we're gonna use it. We wanna cut off those dry bits because they get pretty toothy and they're not very fun to eat. So you wanna go until it starts getting tender. To me, the best way to know. You could just snap it, but I like to take a little piece. That's perfect. So that bottom now is gonna be good on all of those. And I like to make sure it's gonna be tender like that because you don't want it to get too toothsome or dry because that wouldn't be good to eat. So I'm just gonna chop this up very lightly into a few small pieces just so it's a little bit easier to bite, but I also wanna keep it to be nice in size so you can see what you're having. So I'm gonna throw that in there. This to me is what's great. Sheet pan meals are kind of a hit or miss sometimes. They can be good, they can be not so good. This one is good. So what we're gonna add to this is some bright flavor. I'm gonna take some lemon and I'm just gonna do it right over where I have some of that zest go right down onto the bowl. I like to do it right over so any of those residual oils coming from this lemon are going right onto here too. So lemon is a bright flavor. It's pungent, it's sharp, it comes forward. And so it's really good when you're doing something like bacon that's heavy or potato to add something that's really bright to just bring all that flavor forward. So we're gonna add some lemon zest right in there. What we need here is, of course, a good dose of salt. Even though bacon and bacon grease has salt, the gnocchi really needs some salt and it needs some pepper. So we're gonna definitely do some fresh pepper on there. But now we need something like an oil to really bring this all together to actually help it be something that you would use. So what we're gonna do, instead of olive oil, which you could do, is we're gonna take this bacon grease. And if you look at this, look at how it all now just kind of comes down and we can just now measure the amount we need and pour it over. That to me is a good way to gauge how much you're actually using. I'm not quite filling up my thing every time, so I just need to do a little bit more. But that way I can do exactly the amount I wanted without overdoing it. So I'm just gonna take a spatula. To me, anytime you're gonna roast things, even sometimes vegetables, I think it's easier to do it where you can put it into a bowl and then stir everything together to make sure it's well coated. You know, a lot of times you'll see it just all dumped onto a sheet pan. The problem is it can be really hard to make sure it's evenly coated and that you're getting all the flavors incorporated evenly. So I just don't do that. While I'm stirring, I'm gonna add in some thyme. Thyme is to me the best herb to have on hand all the time. It has that nice bright flavor that works well with citrus, but it also works well with all those winter vegetables we often use too. So I like to have it on year round. It's a perennial in the garden, so oftentimes mine will come back year to year unless we have an extra hard winter like a polar vortex, which you never know. Lately we haven't, so I've been able to have my thyme for quite a few years. So once I get that in there, I also just want to stir that in to incorporate. So what you have here is shallot. You have that asparagus. We're gonna add peas at the end because they don't need the long cooking time. But what you also have is now all that bacon flavor that's being soaked into all the gnocchi. That to me is super important. So I'm gonna move the skillet back to the stove. Don't throw out that residual bacon grease. Fry your eggs in that. Fry some potatoes in that. That is gold and you don't wanna get rid of it. So I wanna spread this out just right onto a parchment lined baking sheet. You can see there's a little bit, you can see now that bacon grease, see how it's right there? When it gets cold, it solidifies. So don't be scared of that if like your vegetables were cold. That's still in there and still gonna work. So I'm just gonna spread it out. And now we're gonna pop it into an oven. And it's a hot oven because during this time we're gonna roast that asparagus. We're gonna make sure we heat through all that gnocchi, get those shallots to have a little bit of beautiful like crispness on them and really release their sugars. And then we'll bring it all together at the end with peas, with Parmesan. It's a good weeknight meal. I just pulled this from the oven. It doesn't take too long and you can see, this is what I love. Asparagus cooks super quickly and roasts and see how it starts getting a little bit brown and some of those shallots have some color. The gnocchi gets tender, but it has almost like this slight crisp on the exterior. I love that. I think it's just such a super delicious dish. So I have some frozen and thawed peas. I like putting those on at the end because I like for them to just warm through but not need to, they don't need the roasting time in the oven. They don't need that cooking time. So instead you just want them to warm through with everything else. Now you could pop them in for a little bit, but they can, you know, start getting shrunken and start really like pulling in if they're in the oven too long. So I like them just to take that residual heat and really go in. So now at this point I want to take that bacon that we cooked in the beginning. I just want to chop it up. And this is the best part because this is how simple it is. You're gonna have that bacon flavor already in some of that oil we use, some of the bacon grease. But you know what? If you wanted to make this fully vegetarian, leave out the bacon, use olive oil, and you could do that too. So if you're liking though the bacon, you're gonna have the flavor kind of layered in there with the gnocchi. It's gonna soak in with all those things that we roasted. It's just a great way to use that bacon fat. I think we often render it or we cook it and we don't think about the good uses. And believe me, I grew up always using that bacon grease because it's so good. So here at the end, I wanna take some Parmesan cheese and I wanna just make sure we get some of that all over. Again, Parmesan is such a great way to add that beautiful kind of nutty flavor. It doesn't take a lot to go a long ways. And it just offers that finishing touch to me to kind of pull everything together. It has a richness to it, but it also just has that great ability to kind of marry with anything it's with the thyme, with some more lemon. We put some lemon zest in there, but now what I want to do is take that lemon that we zested, I'm just going to cut it in half, and I want to squeeze a little bit of that lemon on there. And that is just going to kind of just brighten it up here at the end with some of those fresh lemon flavors. I just think when we're in the spring, you want to drive home the fresh flavor as much as you can. And that means things like lemon with peas and asparagus to kind of really bring it out. At this point, guess what? It's finished. This is ready to go. Now you can serve this up in a bowl. You can serve it just from the sheet pan if it's like a weeknight meal, because that's what I love. But I'm just gonna go in here. I mean, this is for me. So I'm gonna eat it and just take a big piece of that gnocchi, get some of the asparagus. That's good. What I love. The gnocchi, since it's that pre-packaged gnocchi that you can buy, it cooks super quickly, but it's super just like tender, melt in your mouth, but it has a nice exterior from roasting in the oven. And it has a nice salty kick with that bacony, smoky flavor. The asparagus has that crisp, crunch, roasted freshness that I love. The peas are like that crisp, tender, perfect stage. That's to me my favorite way to have a pea. And then you get that Parmesan mixed in there, you get that lemon for brightness, you get the shallot. It all works together for this great spring dish that is truly a weeknight wonder. This can come together super quick. It will satisfy so many people. You have the potatoes that will just be hearty. You have the freshness from the vegetables. You have the bacon to satisfy the meat lover. It really can be worked for whoever in your family and all their different needs. So what do I want you to do with this? I want you to make this recipe. Enjoy the season, enjoy some fresh foods, because guess what? Cooking at home is possible. It's healthier when we can make our food at home, and it's just more enjoyable. Share this around. Check my website, wiseguy.com, for this recipe and all my other recipes. And until next time, start thinking spring. I'm going to.